Imagine it. The year is 1841. China has ceded Hong Kong to the British in the First Opium War. 2/3 of a town is destroyed in Puerto Rico because of a fire. New Zealand is proclaimed an independent colony. First Canadian Parliament opens, and a British magazine called Punch issues its first issue, and actually runs until 2002. Pedro II, who's 15, is crowned Emperor of Brazil. The Sultan of Brunei gives a British explorer named James Brooke a parcel of land to make his own kingdom of Sarawak. And there's a revolt against the Shah of Afghanistan, and it's successful. Stateside, there is the first filibuster happening in the Senate, and it lasts from March 5th through March 11th. Cornstarch is patented, and the first fire engine run off of steam finally hits the streets. The second Mormon temple starts construction, and Edgar Allan Poe writes the first detective story. There's a massive fire in New York that kills 242 people, and around the same time there is another New York fire on a steamboat that kills 300. And lastly, our 9th president is inaugurated. Well, let's just say that William Henry Harrison had a lot of firsts for his time in office, which is surprising because one of the things that's big about him is how little amount of time he actually was in office. So Harrison has the record for the shortest amount of time spent as president ever still. He also was the oldest person elected to office. This is not a picture of him when he was first elected to office. And sadly, he is the first president to die in office. More on that in a second. But I think we should give him some credit here. Even though he lasted less than a month in office, he won by a landslide. He had 234 electoral votes versus 60, which was Martin Van Buren. And he won the popular vote. So he would have been something that the people probably were proud of. I like to think that, of course. He was very dedicated to being like a servant of the people. Not so much Van Buren, who was following policies from Jackson, but Jackson, and I guess by extension Van Buren, were not necessarily great listeners of the people, especially Andrew Jackson. He did what he wanted, as we talked about, and yes, we thought we were done talking about him, but I don't know if we'll ever be done. That's why they nicknamed him King Andrew, because he did. So Harrison arrived in February to take up the presidential office, and for his inaugural address, Daniel Webster edited it. And here's another first, or record that he made in office. He has, to this day, the longest inaugural address, nearly like 10,000 words, which is not short. And a lot of that is because of the decorative language of Daniel Webster that he added to what Harrison already had. So who knows what it would have been originally. But he arrived in February. And I don't know if you've ever been to DC in February, but it's cold. And it just so happened on the day of his inaugural address, it was also wet and rainy. Now this is a man who had a military record. He had grown up on a farm. He had experienced bad weather. In his mind, I don't need a coat. I've experienced worse. But this guy is quite a bit older than the last picture, when he may have been able to walk around without a coat. This guy could not, okay? Now, it should be pointed out that he went to D.C. sans wife. And that's important because I just believe that if his wife had have gone with him, he wouldn't have contracted a cold, because he would have worn a jacket. He would have worn a coat. He would not have contracted a cold, and it wouldn't have ultimately took his life. Unfortunately, I can't tell that story. We'll never know, because he was too good for a coat, and he got a cold. And this is the thing too. After the inaugural address, after all that, he went to a dinner, and he didn't change his wet, cold clothes. He was eating and hanging out with people in D.C. in February. So he got sick, and that cold turned into pneumonia, and he didn't make it, obviously. So he was in just a few weeks. This much time, so short. His wife is the only wife to never visit the Capitol during her husband's tenure as president. Fun fact, though, he had multiple children, and his son was the father of someone we'll be talking about in the future, Benjamin Harrison. And one more fun fact, Anna Harrison, which is his wife, had the record for being the oldest first wife, as he was the oldest president at the time. But her record stood until 2021, when Jill Biden took the role. Jill Biden was 69, and Anna Harrison was 65. And if you find anything interesting about the first wives, after I do the series with all the presidents, I will be doing the first wives as well, because they are quite interesting. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and be sure to come back for next video when we talk about John Tyler. And I promise I'll have more to say about John Tyler than Harrison, since he spent more than 3 weeks in the office.